Hello, and welcome to another episode of Daggerheart DM Pocket Guides, where we are just a couple of nerds chatting about ways to help you run super fun sessions, campaigns, arcs, what have you, of Daggerheart. My name is Allison, and that's my friend.
And I'm the special guest, Matt.
I got tired of talking to myself, so I said, Matt, come here. Matt's our forever GM. That we're bringing up to speed on GMing Daggerheart because he knows how to GM a bunch of other phenomenal fun games.
Exactly. So this series is a little bit more conversational. It definitely is a little bit more brainy in that we're kind of assuming that you have been a game master of some game, 5e, Apocalypse, Shadowdark, anything.
Apocalypse.
You have a little experience, and you're really wanting to jump into Daggerheart, and I highly recommend that you do. And I'm going to be you in this situation, and I'm going to be asking AK, who is a phenomenal Dagger master, a bunch of questions. And here we go.
My cute little pupil. Yes. I'm excited to dig back in. What's your first question, Matt?
I'm going to ask a question about Daggerheart's success in making combat a collaborative thing, but also spotlight balanced, giving each player the space, and not having initiative. And then another thing that I've been thinking about is how much quote unquote metagaming is kind of necessary in this game, which can be a no-no in a lot of tables. But you can't really not metagame in Daggerheart. Is that? Would you say that true? Especially when it comes to you're talking about collaborating, and if the concept of metagaming is, well, my player wouldn't know this unless they were shouting it out. How do you kind of speak to all? I know I've just asked you a bunch of questions.
Like four questions. Let's see if my ADHD can keep up.
You got it.
First of all, I will say of our bunch, I am always the least worried with metagaming. Metagaming has never really bothered me.
Me neither. I don't mind it too much.
And especially because I make assumptions about our parties when we play, that we have conversations. We know these basic things, about one another. And so, like, my bard in our Strahd game is going to be a loudmouth in that moment, is going to yell out the thing, that's happening. So I don't consider that metagaming. I consider that, that character acting in character. So I don't really worry about metagaming here. So it's an interesting question, and I'm now, like, my gears are turning, but that's my quick answer, and I'll keep thinking through it. As far as we're going to go back to one of the first things that I shared, as far as things like the experiences go with the initiative list and keeping things running and making sure everybody gets a turn, which is play the damn game. Cut. We're done with this video. Just play Daggerheart and tell us what you think.
Play it first, right?
Just play it. Again, as someone who, when I first heard initiative-less combat, like, oh, that's going to be, there's going to, and I could be a spotlight hog. Surprise, surprise. And there are times when I want to keep going, and I saw in one of the Discords I'm in, there was a conversation around, like, people who do, like, more of, like, the war gamey kind of stuff, who do like to min-max, are going to be like, well, why wouldn't I just have my heaviest hitter just hit and hit and hit and hit and hit? And I guess if the whole party decides, like, we're just going to have, our guardian and our warrior just march up and just smack away, and that's the type of game that everybody wants to play, then okay, I'm not going to tell you no. That's not my job. As a GM, and especially as a GM who likes to GM one-shots for strangers from all over the world who have differing levels of comfort and familiarity with one another, I do think it is my job to kind of watch out for the flock. And so I am trying to constantly notice, honestly, both as a player and as a GM, but especially as a GM, if I haven't heard from Evan in a minute, I will make a point to say, like, Evan, is there anything that your character wants to do in this moment? And I think that as players, as a group that is, has been playing together for a while and is comfortable with each other, I notice we do that naturally as players a lot. Where we say like, oh, I'd like to take a turn, but like, Matt, did you want to go first? communication is key. I also tend to like, in a moment where maybe I want to act before someone who hasn't had a turn yet, I might communicate to them at the table. And maybe this is the metagaming part of your question, why I want to go first. The first Daggerheart campaign I played in, again with Bladebound Saga, I played a rogue. And that rogue was equipped with a lot of things that would make baddies a lot easier to hit and do damage for the rest of the party. So we did kind of get into a rhythm where like I would try and strike first every time. Or like maybe if my effect had worn off, I would say like, hey, Druid, I know that you were about to do this big bad attack. Could I go ahead and try and pin him down again? Which lowers, their evasion score so you can hit it easily or do more damage. And I would literally make that a conversation in character. Like, we're on the battlefield, we're all panicking, and my sassy little Qatari rogue, Izzy, is like, yo, can I hit it again? In character. Not for glory, but like, because I see what, my fellow party is trying to do. So, being mindful as both a player and a GM, but especially as a GM to referee that. The other thing as a GM I want to actively encourage is call for tag teams, because tag teams are still very new to a lot of players. We're so used to having rounds and initiative. Sometimes we forget that we can do pile-on together. So I will just blatantly ask. Like, if I can tell that you and Evan are both thinking about going, I'll be like, anybody got 3 hope? You guys, you want tag team? And let y'all have fun. And I don't make you. If y'all don't have the hope or you don't want a tag team, I'm not going to be like, well, you have to. But a lot of times people do want a tag team when they remember to do it. And so that's kind of how I do that.
It's interesting that while I completely understand the more war gamey tactical crowd having a hard time with this game, I also could see the flip side where you have to almost have a chess level understanding, not just of your own character, but you could really utilize the session zero and add that to the list of, I want to know what my party does in combat. What can you do to set up those things, whether you're playing a one-shot or a massive campaign. And then it gets to be about, like, the opponent becomes the adversary in the game, and then your crew is, your crew becomes one chess player, right? And then I feel like the concept of not falling into ruts, but like really understanding which player sets everything up. And it's a very cool thing, especially with friends, but even with strangers. I think if you feel free to relay, I can do this, right? Now, have you had anybody to completely balk? Have you had to use the optional rules and implement some kind of initiative because they just couldn't?
No. We have been lucky. Great. Our community is phenomenal. I mean, we've definitely had varying levels of comfort, and I definitely have had to say, like, hey, Matt, did you want to take a turn? Yeah.
There's a little bit of anxiety as a player. There's a tiny bit. Like, you don't, if you're a nice person, if you're a Southerner, if you're a Canadian, and you're sitting around the table and you know who you are. You know who you are. And you're just trying to be polite. But you have all these great ideas secretly. That's not going to help you in this game. Yeah. It's not going to help you to not speak and not speak out. But yes, sorry, continue.
Yeah. We have been very lucky. Our community and our community games have been very, and again, I mean, we've definitely had people who are a little bit more like just wide open and wild. But as a GM, I've stopped looking at myself as like me versus the players, and it's me and the players all trying to tell a really satisfying story. It's my job to build tension. It's my job to create those moments that they can shine and be the heroes, and things like that. But it's not really like an us versus them. The other thing that I will say that I do, again, as a GM who runs primarily games online, one-shots, but with kind of a dedicated community and people coming in and out, is we have a Discord server. And so I create the groups in our Discord server prior to the game, so that way if people want to talk it out, they can. And I have all levels. We have had games where like they are just chatty Cathys in there in weeks leading up to it, and they're all answering connections questions, and they're throwing them back and forth, and they're sharing their arcs and art and all of these things. And then I've had people that are radio silent up until the time that we play, and then we come in, they give their introductions, and we're off to the races, and all points in between that. So it's about asking the question, not demanding the answer. So like all you can do as a GM is say, do you want to? Not, Matt, you have to go now, which is what initiative does. Initiative says, Matt, you have to go now.
Right.
Which I don't love.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
That's
interesting.
And the other thing, that being part of a lot of online forums, both our own as well as just the greater Darrington, Daggerheart gaming, TTRPG community, is this game's not for everyone. Just like a game you might love may not be for us. And like,
yes,
just give people the freedom to
give yourself a break. If you don't like it, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And it is 100% okay. Okay.
This game spoke to us very quickly, very easily. We were all in it pretty immediately. But there's no shame or shade for people who are like, yeah, it's not for me. And we've we all did come out of the game being like, it's so rules light. And I agree with you. This is, it's not crunchy, but it's definitely rules medium. At the least. But also again, that's probably table to table too, because there probably are, tables that do more of the like exploration, wandering, and maybe use the system and the mechanics a little bit differently than the people who are like, I want a satisfying combat at least every other session. And we'll probably cover this in future videos, but like, I don't know, man, the more I get to know Daggerheart, the more I'm a fan of how purposefully vague some of the rules are, because the designers of the game want you to flavor it. So they're not going to say, this is what the poison condition is. This is what cloaked means, because they want you to, in the game, something happens that poisons one of your PCs, and for the GM and the PC to engage in a little dance of like, what does that mean? Does that mean you're at disadvantage on your agility rolls? Does that mean that you are blinded? Like, and we're gonna make it up at the table together, as opposed to like hard and fast rule of like, this is what poison gets you, no exceptions. Because now we're not spending time arguing and looking up and like all of the other little things that we have to do for the more dense games. We're making shit up on the spot. So if you hear that phrase, making shit up on the spot, and you're filled with terror, that's okay. Daggerheart.
That is okay. That is absolutely okay. And we understand. Though, again, just play the damn game. Just give it a shot first, and then make this decision. So possibly one of the scarier roles of the GM is this concept of the GM move. And it has a very specific name. I find, based on my experience with other role-playing games, it's not a new phrase to me, the move. But I think to a lot of people it is.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? Are they, I keep asking so many questions at once, but what does the GM move mean to you? And how do you approach GM moves?
Yeah. So I have a bowl of crystals. This is my ultimate sensory experience. I love this sound so much. And those who play with me on any regular basis probably know this sound from me. They're just little stars and moons, because the first place I ran Daggerheart was in a place called Moonfall, so that just felt like the right thing to do. So GM moves. I've got my bowl full of tokens, and I've got an empty bowl. Of course, I start with however many I'm supposed to start with, whether that's 6 or we've just had downtime or whatever. So the GM moves. Even though I'm playing online, I'm always being ruled by what's in here. And so I will literally, as players are acting, they're taking their meaningful actions. They're in the spotlight. They're the important ones. They're doing things. They're cooking with gas. I've got a little bit of fear banked. But then, Winrieth, our Furbolg Ranger, rolls with fear. As Win is, kind of describing the move and what happened that caused you to roll with fear, I'm holding on to that fear token. I'm not putting it anywhere. And that is, kind of like my silent signal that like, ooh, the roll with fear happened. I picked this up, and now I get to make a GM move. Or I could stow it away for later, but I think it's a little bit more fun when it becomes a dance, a conversation, rather than like go, 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 go. So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, kind of answer. That's my first GM move. Win gave me a fear, and so there's going to be a consequence for that roll, right? So that would be the first thing that I would do. And now that I have, like, things have volleyed onto my side. The players have been acting and acting and acting, and finally I got a fear. And I could have used any of these fears to interrupt at any time, and that would have been another GM move. But I'm going to keep acting, I'm going to use that first one to attack. And then all of a sudden, 2 more arrows go whizzing by as you guys realize that there are adversaries on the roof that you hadn't even been aware of. And I had 2 more fear to spend on that. So now, not only are you under attack, but you're aware of just how much more tense the situation is. Because you thought you were dealing with that one dragon. But here comes some more stuff in, and then like those guys on the roof, one of them might be a lieutenant, and he might be able to like sound the call. There's another move where, suddenly a horn blares, or, and it's just like you're layering all these things. And then, like I have 2 things left in my little bowl here. So I might be like, all right, how do you guys respond to all these shenanigans? Right. And all those are fear moves, whether it's just, kind of, I tend to count like a turn, even though there's not turns and rounds, but like a turn is, kind of like a basic movement within about close range. And, either like a feature or an attack, or, sending someone into a farther range to do a thing. So all of a sudden you see one of their scouts go sprinting across the field, like, and I don't tell you why that scout is sprinting across the field, I could maybe start a countdown, and I tend to make my countdowns visible on the screen. And again, I may or may not tell you why we're counting down, but suddenly a D6 comes up and I just moved it down to 5. And so it's like it's your sandbox. It's your playground where you just get to start like pulling all of these different strings to, just kind of like amp up the drama for your players, and then be respectful of them because they have moves they want to make. So let them answer. I've learned in combat, do not hoard your fear. Like you can hold up to 12. Don't do that. Like spend them. But save a couple, because I've played in sessions where like players are just rolling straight hope and crits for a while, and so if you kind of empty the coffers, you could be waiting. Yeah. So I tend to save a couple to interrupt when I need to, and those are all GM moves. Those are all different ways to spotlight. And
a dumb question, and a very a very basic question then is: are they always created by fear? So the GM move is always created by fear.
Yep.
So to me, again, there are games that exist, also written by Spencer Stark, to be honest, where this collection, this abacus, this scorecard doesn't exist. Okay. Like you can't, not really, not in the same way. And you can introduce complications, and you can have moves kind of whenever you want. But this actually I see as being not, again, a tiny bit of a guardrail or a helper. Like you at least know that you can. That you've got this bowl to work with of things that you can say and do and make. So you don't have to worry about constantly keeping track of it in your head or
that's why
worrying about the balance.
That's why I use a tactile thing and hold on to it. So then that way I know I don't put it in the bowl. I literally put it in my hot
So when somebody
hand.
rolls a fear, you just pick it up and you just
I just pick it up and I'm just holding it, and I'm waiting for you to finish your turn and tell me what you're doing and resolve your action. And then I'm say, well, so to kind of, because I have had this question a lot from GMs. GM moves are fully powered by fear. You have to have fear in order to be able to take GM moves. But there are lots of ways to generate fear. Players rolling with fear is the biggest one. But there are, like, for instance, you start, the campaign with 6. You generate fear on downtime, which becomes a natural, like, when players decide if they want to take downtime because they need to heal, they need to repair their armor, they need to prepare, great.
There's a consequence for that.
There's a consequence to that. and it's bolstering me a little bit, so I've got something to play with. There are also, much like the PCs on their domain cards, like y'all can mark stress and to do all kinds of different things. There are ways that the adversaries might be able to, like, I got to move on a fear move, right? Because Wynn gave me a fear, but now the adversary has a feature that they can mark a stress to spotlight 3 additional minions. So one fear got me 4 players on the board, and all of that spelled out for you in things like the domain cards and stat blocks. So you don't have to memorize any of this stuff. Have a general idea of who you're playing with and what you're going to be doing, so you know about that feature. But I couldn't have activated any of that if I hadn't been working off of that fear in the first place. So fear drives it all for the GM.
Yeah. And I'm going to speak again to the tacticians out there. This is another example, as I'm talking to you, that I'm starting to understand. This could be extremely tactical. This could be extremely yes, you have to kind of make up what the result is. It may not be on a table, but it's still kind of cool in that way. How do you make these GM moves feel earned? I think you kind of touched on this already by you're kind of holding your fear before you put it into the bowl. But what if it's how do you keep it from feeling like random punishment?
Yeah.
Just like, boom, I'm punishing you, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you personally find the balance there?
I think I think a really fun way to do that is what you were kind of getting at in the beginning of this episode, where we were talking about like the player backstories and the player, having the players create the world. And I mentioned this in one of the pocket guides we've already done of like, like if, there's the jagged knife syndicate and you've got a syndicate rogue, and like you say like, ooh, you notice an emblem on a cloak. How do you feel about, and then like take note of their answer. Like, is that a rival faction? Is that a faction that they, departed from on not good terms and stuff like that? And so then, so that came up 2 sessions ago, and now suddenly we're fighting these jagged knife bandits. And like, of course they're going to hit the rogue. They recognized her, and things like that. So like, I think that's a really cool way to tie in the connections and the questions and things like that. So yes, it could be situational. Wynn failed his roll. The consequence of that rolling with fear, gave me. And so the thing that he tried to shoot shot back, and that's going to happen. But there's all of these like storytelling moments too, where you can have the connections between not only the PCs, but also the PCs in the world around them, and factor that into things like combat and make that way.
Do you ever spend fear secretly? Meaning, do you ever set up up something that may be a bit more of a long game, and you're like, okay, that I should spend a fear for this, but you don't necessarily tell the players, and then, or is that not even allowed? This is just a random question.
That feels like metagaming to me, but like I see where you're going with it. I would say I would not recommend spending fear. Like, I'm not going to bank fear in hopes that some action is going to happen that's going to trigger the syndicate to come on. You know what I mean? Like that.
I see.
Because we're operating beat to beat, and so I don't want to be 5 beats ahead. I want to be in this beat, in this moment, in this scene with my players. But by all means, like, if you can tie all the different threads together, and then when those 2 factions do meet, like whatever fear you have can be. But like, I kind of see what you're like, countdowns, for example, and that's one thing we probably need to cover more in future videos, but like countdowns can be secret. Environmental actions, like, so you're supposed to tell the players that a countdown is an effect. You don't have to tell them what it's counting down to, and it could be something in their favor. Like if you're moving through like a crowded market, and you're trying to escape something, maybe the countdown ends and the security, apprehends the suspect, which isn't you. So countdowns can work in your favor, or they can trigger something bad. And so that's a fun way to like build tension, because the players don't know what the countdown's for and things like that. I'm trying to think through. I know I kind of blanket said no. There have got to be, and this is the other thing that's really fun about Daggerheart is as you start to build your own adversaries, like take the existing adversary stat blocks out of the core rulebook, and then just reflavor them. So use that as like a base if you're like me and you don't like a blank page. But almost every game that we play, something has tentacles because I think it's funny. So like everybody's just gotten used to like there being, look, there's tentacles right behind me right there. Everybody's kind of gotten used to Allison's going to have some kind of cephalopod adversary, right?
Right.
And so there could be like hidden fear features that like something has to happen before that feature gets triggered. And that's the big reveal, right? I think I've talked about this before where you can kind of have like some of the baddies, especially at some of the higher tiers, can morph at certain points. So it's like once they hit all of their hit points, now suddenly there's something even more terrifying. That can all
Super
be
Dark Souls.
Super Dark Souls, but like super secret until, the
That's a good point.
So I guess you could, like, if I know that, like, something has to happen, like I have to burn through all of my stress or I'm trying to, like, think on the spot. I bet there could be something where it's like, I've got to initiate that countdown. I've got to get it to 1 because you can spend fear to advance a countdown. So that could be a secret fear use right there. I've got 5 fear and I'm going to spend 2 right now to go ahead and attack the party, but I'm going to spend the other 3 to advance the countdown because something really cool is going to happen then. Or I've got scouts coming and they're not yet in the scene. They're not yet activated, but I'm going to use 3 fear to get them to now they're in, far range and now they're in close range. And then y'all didn't see them coming, but I spent the fear to like get them here.
Yeah.
I could see something like that where like a fear feature is like sounding a silent alarm, is going through the mycelial network. To like alert, the other faction, and y'all don't know why.
Right.
So
I get very excited thinking about that because 5th edition can be a very rules lawyer haven.
Yeah.
And you can so easily explain away something that the GM said based on rules. Yeah. And that is very hard for me because I think more in a Daggerheart way. Like this is the story that's happening.
Yep.
But we're playing 5th edition at the time, and yes, they're correct. They can't jump that. This creature cannot do that.
Yep.
I love that there's less of that in Daggerheart.
Yeah.
I love that you could say, well, but I'm spending 3 fear.
Yep.
I'm spending 3 fear. That's 3 fear gone.
Yep.
So yes, it's happening, but that's I never thought about that. Building adversaries is probably something that is very scary for some GMs. You do not have the monster manual here.
Yeah.
But as you have pointed out in the Daggerheart, in the Daggermaster screen, you do have improvised adversaries. You do have immediately ways to kind of reskin things in your brain, which I would argue is becoming a more becoming a bigger part of 5th edition too. Just the idea of having templates of adversaries. By the way, also side note, I love the word adversary. I can't believe that this is one of the first games I've heard that calls them adversaries instead of monsters, which doesn't explain the king of the castle. That's an asshole. Right.
I also love that there's like social adversaries. It's not always just about combat. Like, so there are adversaries in the book ready for you to have a conversation, ready for you to engage in not at all any sort of tactical combat, but some kind of like war of the mind. If you want to play chess, get you a cool environment and one of those adversaries. I mean, it sounds like we have a lot more questions to cover. Keep the questions coming to us. We'll keep making these because it's really fun to talk to you about my favorite game, Matt.
I know.
Did I get out your first question?
There's so much.
Wrapped up.
You did. You really did. There was only one more that I had. One of my favorite things about this game is death. I feel like Daggerheart has done this so extremely well.
Squid.
But I just a quick question. Because the death mechanic can mean that the player gets to choose whether they're coming back next, whether this character is coming back next time, or leaving the game immediately.
Yep.
Well, how do you feel about that? Because I know as a player, it is a very emotional thing to die, and that you yourself have been very emotional about a player death. Because this is not Shadow Dark, and this is not DCC where death is expected, and it's not 5e where death is very difficult to achieve.
Yeah.
Where do you lie personally? Just real quick.
Just in terms of my general feelings on Daggerheart death.
General feeling about the three options for death, which are, either just risk the big biscuit,
biscuit.
blaze of glory, or
Take a
stay
scar.
but with a wound. Yeah, take a scar.
I love it. And I've gotten now to play with death moves a few times. I've also had death moves robbed from me. There was a situation where I was supposed to die and someone intercepted it beautifully. Love you, AJ.
Intercepted your death.
And I could not agree more that death feels anything but empty and hollow. And we actually got into this a little bit in one of our recent actual plays. I won't say more than that, but like based on where you are in the session and in the fight influences the decisions that your PCs may make. So like we're in the opening parts of the fight, we're an hour into a 3-hour long session. I might take, I probably am not going to take the scar and just be out for the rest of the session. I'm probably going to like risk it. I'm probably going to, like see if there's a chance that I can like stay in. Versus like it's end of the session, it's end of the arc, it's end of the campaign. Like
just go out.
Just go out in a blaze of glory and do the cool thing that you've always wished that you could do.
The coolest thing ever.
Yeah. And so as a GM, there's another opportunity for collaborative storytelling is what is that move? And like, that's where I think, here's what I really think about Daggerheart. Part of me wants to be a really big heel right now and be like, and that's where we'll pick up next time with Pocket Dimensions.
Right.
DM, Pocket guys, but I won't. I will resolve this. But I think that probably one of the most satisfying things that you could have is when the GM and the player get to work together for what that big boss move is. What the player is going to do, how it's going to impact their weapons, how it's going to impact their worldly possessions, how it's going to impact their party and make them feel, what is the party going to see? Are they going to be able to shield or shroud it? Like all of those different questions can come in, and then the GM gets to come in and describe all the gore and viscera and like how the big bad responds to that hit and things like that. And that's where I would definitely encourage you to not play it mechanically, not go by the rule book of the like major, minor, severe thresholds and stress. Like let the story, maybe that tops off their stress. Maybe that, maybe that bolsters them with resolve to finish the fight, like, and clears the stress. I don't know. I can't dictate that for you here and now outside of combat, but like, just the way that the GM and the player can work together in that moment, I think is really just, I don't know anything like it in any other game. So I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that a satisfying enough answer for you, Matt? Do you have anything to share? Or?
So satisfying. That is, yeah. This has been really great. I'm hoping that people watching got as much out of it as I did. I know you, so I talk about these things all day. So, there's a little bit of a pretense going on here right now, but I learned a whole lot today. Okay, no joking. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on my podcast.
Yeah, thank you for being on my pocket short.
Thank you. Pocket guides. No, thank you for joining me.
On my pocket guides.
Yeah. I would much rather talk to you than talk to an empty screen. You're way more fun than me just staring at my own face. Yeah, we'll have to do more of these with more of your questions. Yeah. We're kind of, Matt and I are using this as like a body doubling, a pairing to bring Matt up to speed in. In Daggerheart DMing. We talk about these things. We have a gorgeous Discord. The link is in the show notes, where we have a lot of people who are far better GMs than I am. And we have
know
channels
about
dedicated
that.
to. Yeah, I do. I've played with
There's
them.
some really great GMs. There's
Really,
some
really
really
great
great GMs. I mean, phenomenal. And I will also say, our Patreon is special because we allow, part of your hard-earned cash goes towards the chance to play these games
Like it's
with
games with
these
us.
phenomenal GMs,
Yeah.
including Allison, but definitely other, all of our friends that are just,
So cool.
actually, honestly, some of like the world's first Daggerheart GMs are setting these stages. Not just Matt Mercer, but all manner of talents.
Well, the best thing that you can do for us is like the video, leave us a comment with any questions that you have, because we could talk about this for ages, and that's been what's really we will. And whether or not you comment, we will continue to. No, I'm just kidding. But getting to actually help people with their questions was what I was going to say has been really, really fun and interesting. And I learned so much from reading the comments and the way that y'all are running sessions. And I think that that's really cool. So helping us get the word out there so that way other people can come and ask their questions, and we can just get this big fun community of nerds playing games with their friends. And making them inclusive and collaborative and weird and nerdy and any other words you want to assign here. Yay! Well, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining Matt, and we will see you on future episodes and around the dimension doing other nerd shit.
Let's do it.
And bless your Daggerheart.
Bless you, Daggerheart.
Yay!